that I have succeeded in getting Nina Joy and Pat O'Mitty to come here in the spring and give us a workshop. I said they had to come and teach at least me. And if they were willing to give a workshop, then we want a workshop, of course. So I invite you all to that workshop. I'm willing to get Madison Square Garden if necessary, because it seems to me that anybody who can go and teach focusing to people in a village in Afghanistan, these are people who don't know anything about psychology, about all this fancy stuff that we do, straightforwardly like that, so that they can go home and do it. One of her stories is this woman in the village who learned listening in town, but now she was in the village at home and she was all upset, and so she got her husband to listen to her. So I say to Nina Joy, I say, how is that? How can you teach listening so precisely that she can make her husband do it? What do you tell them to do when you teach them to listen? Well, she says, well, I tell them to remember a time when they really felt heard. There's a group she has. So I say, well, most of the people I deal with never got heard. So she says, well, as a group they managed. There's a couple of them who can describe that. And I say, well, what else do you say? Well, that's very simple. I tell them, you know, not to ask questions and not to say anything what they think, just to, you know, say back the crux of it. And I tell them to hold the person in their heart and to say back. And I say, you know, it just comes out of her spontaneously, sort of like. Now, this instruction of hold the person in your heart, that isn't just any old instruction. You know, we've been teaching this now for more than a half a century, and I never heard that instruction. That's a rather important instruction, right? So I'm expecting to understand a lot more of how this works. The other reason that I think it's very important is because they call this a psychosocial service. And from the government's point of view, it comes with hygiene and agricultural methods. That's what they're teaching. And I think that's terribly important. Now I understand. If it has a slot in a program, and the slot has a name, I don't care what it is, but it has that official name. So she's telling us that this is now a psychosocial service. But I'm quite excited about that. This complete difference that there is between the feelings and the guest, the felt sense. Much more difference than we usually do when we teach it. So imagine again my man in the village who is furious and he's just blown up with anger, and he's got his weapon and he's on the way to run out there and fight the guy. And he says to himself, wait. Maybe, this may be a guest. It's all different. I've been saying all my life that bad things have good things implicit in them if you can find them. That's not what he's saying. He's saying something completely different. He knows, because he was taught this simple thing, that you sit down. Well, already this is something, because it's at the door rushing out. No, you sit down and you have to get quiet to find your guest. And it really is just like having a guest in a culture where guests are very important. You know, in all the traditional cultures, guests are sacred because you couldn't travel in the world if everybody didn't have some kind of hospitality. So even if you're from the tribe that they'll kill you later, when you come to the door, you're safe. They let you in, and they'll sit you down, and they'll bring you water to wash, and they'll bring you tea, and they'll ask you what's new. So to have a guest, a very distinct thing. So you let them in, and they're different. You're not the guest. You know, you're the guy that opens the door. But there's the guest, and it's completely different from whatever you were feeling a moment before. You were occupied with, no, your door. Now, here's a guest. And so what you do is you get quiet. That's the first thing. And it doesn't mean, I'm pretty sure, that you get so deep that you meditate and you become passive and there's nothing. Not like that. You just get enough quiet so you can talk to your guest. And then you see what comes there, that's the guest. And it's something totally different than what you had before you opened the door.